today I have done a training session with Ivy looking at her cold game retrieve, which I'm going to share with you in this video. But to give you a little bit of background, when Ivy was first introduced to cold game, she didn't pick it. And so that was back 10 months ago now, back in February. And so at the time we then worked through some training exercises to try and encourage her to pick the birds. And I actually did film our first session, which I'll include in a link in this clip now if you want to go and check that out. But that was starting to progress well, and she was starting to do some simple retrieves with partridge, which was successful. But then spring and summer months hit and I ran out of my supply of cold game, and so we didn't do anything for a while. And so in this shooting season we've started to try and work on it a little bit more, and we're now in a position that she's confidently picking partridge in more complex retrieves, but she's still struggling with bigger birds. She's just either not picking them, tend to be the larger pheasants that she just doesn't pick, or she's picking them but it's very messy and very scrappy. So it's something that we still need to continue to work on. So in today's session I've had access to some widgeon, which I believe are duck. I'm not an expert, but I believe it's duck. And it is bigger than a partridge but smaller than a pheasant, so it's a really good transition bird to be using to help to build her confidence. And I must say that she really surprised me in this session with how easily she took to it, so that was really positive. And so in this video I'm just going to take you through the few exercises that I did with her, working on that cold game, getting confidence in picking it in a few different scenarios, and also share a few hints and tips that I've picked up from people that have been helping me on our journey along the way. So hopefully you enjoy. The first exercise I tried was to put the cold game into a retrieving exercise that Ivy and I do quite frequently. So I've got my white marker post out about 20-25 yards away from us, and I've put my cold game, my fur dummy and my feather dummy around that post, and then I'm just going to line and send her, and she gets to pick whichever item she wants and brings that back, and then we repeat and line her again. To my surprise, she decided to pick the cold game first, which was a great surprise. She does fumble a bit while picking it up, and I think it's really important when looking at introducing cold game to a dog that you give them the time to try and work it out, because it is a bit different. So she brought that back beautifully to hand, and I was really surprised. That's the best cold game retrieve she has ever done. And so I then relined her to finish the exercise and got her to pick one more item. Then I found what she did here very interesting. So she knows that the other two dummies are there, but she's sniffing around almost to see if there's something better. She then looks up at me to ask kind of, what do you want, Mum? So I give her her hunt whistle, and then she immediately picks one of the dummies and brings it back. But I just thought it was quite interesting behaviour to observe that I wasn't expecting. And then after that second retrieve, I went and picked up the final item that was there, and then decided that we needed to progress this onto a more interesting environment, because the cold game retrieve was really successful, almost too easy for her. So we moved ourselves to a different part of the field which just had a bit more cover, and I threw out two marked retrieves for her, both of them a cold game. And I played about with the distance here slightly, so the first one that I'm going to line her to was about 15 yards away, so a shorter distance to what we just got success with, but with more interesting ground. And then the second one was a bit further, so probably about 25-30 yards away. So I start out with the short retrieve, line and send her towards that one, and in this instance she could also see the marker post, so that was helping to give her a target. But again, she picked it beautifully, came straight back, and she faffed a little bit less with that pickup, which was nice to see. So I rewarded her for that, and then put the duck on my game carrier, and then lined and sent her for the next retrieve. Now here she couldn't actually see the white marker post, it was too hidden, so I lined her out slightly right of where she needed to be, because the wind was coming from left to right. So then she picked up the scent and picked the bird again, did it really nicely and brought it back to hand, which was perfect. I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So again she was rewarded, and then I put the duck on my game carrier. And then a tip that I got from Lucy, who runs Canine Intuition, which is based over in Newmarket area, when I went for a one-to-one with her for cold game retrieving with Ivy back in September, was to get your dog used to you carrying game around and that being normal and them learning to mind their manners around that. So I thought that was really useful because actually in that session with Lucy, Ivy was trying to mug me, and so I've tried to integrate that into our training since then. And I'll include a link to Lucy's website in the description below. And then I decided to practice retrieving just in a different setup, so we looked at a couple of directional retrieves. So I've sat Ivy up and I'm throwing the birds out, one out to her right and one out to her left, and then I come back away from her, I blow my stop whistle, and then I direct her first out to the bird on the left, and she responds beautifully. She did a really nice straight line to that one, picked it without issue, and then came straight back and delivered to hand. So that again was practically perfect, and then we just repeated that on the other side. And again, that was a really successful retrieve, so I decided that we would call that a day for the cold game retrieving. But we did one more retrieve before ending the session, and I can't remember who gave me this tip. It might have been Lucy, or it could have been someone else. But the tip was that you should always end a game training session with the retrieve of a canvas dummy, because you do hear stories about dogs who switch off of canvas once they start retrieving game. And so by introducing canvas within your training sessions and at the end, it helps to prevent that reluctance to pick canvas, which obviously you don't want because it's so easy to train using canvas dummies. You don't tend to have an endless supply of cold game to train with. So a nice tip to finish on, and I was really pleased with that session overall, so we finished it up there. As always, if you have any tips, any advice or any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments below, and thanks for watching.